Hey la, welcome to Coffee with Avila. I'm Aviana Lemaire, and I said I was going to make a video to talk about why we sometimes as autists end up seeming like we're bonding with somebody, and then all of a sudden they just up and disappear, or all of a sudden everything is uncomfortable, something changes, we have absolutely no idea why. It was fine in the moment, and after the fact it's really not. And it very often is that they'll just be completely uncomfortable. A lot of times in my life what happens is that this is a special one. There are deep spiritual reasons for this stuff, but no matter how I state it, it's basically going to be explaining what's going on. I've had a lot of experiences, and one particular experience is popping into my mind right here, where afterward, sometimes what's happening is that we've gotten into a conversation with somebody and they've shared a lot. When they've had a time to go off and think about what they shared and how that makes them look, excuse me, inside of their own culture, inside of their own minds, inside of their own worries and insecurities and their personal capacity, then all of a sudden they don't like you anymore because they shared. And I had one particular experience where after that, because they shared, not because you heard it, you were just there, but they made this choice and now they're like, I have regret, so they mistreat you after the fact. They could know, they could not know. Generally, they have no idea what's up. One particular experience I had that was very recent, and it changed some things for me. I just decided, I don't care if you're a human being, I don't care what the information is. If you're going to treat me this way, people aren't going to treat me this way. I'm done with it now. But after the fact, what happened was all of a sudden everything that I had shared, where they're sharing, I'm just going to put it out there because I'm not even talking about who it is. I was talking with somebody who had been having a long-term affair with a married man. And the reason why I put that out there is because I need to give an example for all of my autists out there to understand. This is what this person was sharing with me. And I was listening and not judging because it's just who I am. And they were really enjoying being able to share all of this, get it off their chest. And one of the things that was said was, hey, can't say this to my, I really appreciate being able to say it to you. Can't say it to my best friend anymore. You know when your best friend isn't willing to hear it anymore. Wow, you've already gone through the ringer on that one. And they are not here for it for various reasons. But they said, I can't even say it to my best friend anymore because she can't stand hearing about it. She just doesn't want to hear it. So this person was talking to me about that, and I'm listening. I'm just listening. We're just chatting, whatever. I was talking back about a relationship that I was in where both people are, for me, this is obvious, but obviously single. I'm single. He's single. Everything's fine. Something that I don't even want to say a relationship per se because it makes it sound like it was hardcore and heavy, but there was an interest. And so it was a very mutual and mutually discussed interest, and it was really nice to have that mutual discussion because that was my first interaction like that with someone who was autistic, so it was a whole different level. We can be clear about what's going on and we're interested and we're asking questions and all this stuff. It's a whole different level of conversation. But I was talking about that, and this prompted her to talk about this, so we'd have these conversations and we'd share. At a certain point, once she'd gotten it off of her chest, because there was another meetup coming, and when the meetup happened, after the fact, she had some things to say about that. And then after a little while, when she was done talking about it, I noticed right around the time that she got herself mentally in a place where she's like, okay, let's go off and see if I can have some other relationships. You know, because he's still married, he's still going back to wife and kids, and, you know, now she's the person who's got all the updates on the marital situation and the children and everything that's happening in your house and your family and all that stuff. But they had their meetup, and once it was done, she's going off thinking about other guys, which is interesting because she's like, the best relationship for me would be like, hey, if I could have a guy who's just fine with that, so that whenever the married guy comes around again, we can be together, but I still have that other relationship, that would be perfect. But she didn't expect that. She was just saying that's what would be perfect for her in her mind. And you know what? Everything is out there. If there's a foot, there's a shoe for it. But she was talking about this, and the linchpin is, what she's talking about is a series of decisions being made to have an ongoing affair. After that happened and she started thinking about something else, where it's just dating regular guy who were ostensibly free and available. Well, I guess the other guy was free and available too, wasn't he? But single people Then all of a sudden, she started mistreating me. And the reason why I went into all of that detail is I had gone through something in my life that was really frightening, and it involved a life or death situation, and the fear thereof. I've been through a lot of situations where when the threat, some of us have been through some horrible stuff, and we recognize the threat when it's coming again. And it was a really horrible night that I'd had with this threat involved. I had shared that, and long story short, she decided to come at me after that. And she brought that up. And she started needling me about it, because in her mind, there are all these different things I can do. And I've already said those things don't apply. There are reasons why. My life was complex. There are different things to deal with. And the options that I had available to me were not options that, for instance, she had available to her. She was living a different life. But long story short, she started bringing this up. This will happen sometimes. A person who shares a whole lot with us, and I'm talking about it specifically with an autistic thing, but any empath, anyone who doesn't judge when people are talking, anyone who's there, this could apply to you. And you might not know exactly what's going on 100% unless you have that awareness, you've gained that wisdom, you've done that studying. Something has to give you the knowledge. You could have the Gnostic knowledge. I've had a touch of all of that at different points in my life, and I've come to realize through all of that cohesively coming together, what they're trying to do, it's kind of a twisted way of taking out their aggression against themselves for oversharing, against the person to whom they overshared. And I'm not using that term in a pathological way, the way some people do with us as autists. I'm saying oversharing because in context of what happened and how it was handled, let's face it, NT culture is not about being straight out and flat out and saying things like this. It's very often not even about admitting that you're having an affair with a married person, because if it doesn't sound good, it's not supposed to be said directly and outright. It's about encoding different things. This was a very clear and outright conversation about what was going on, with lots of details about what did and didn't take place and the history of things. And after the fact, what happens, sometimes NTs just need to get stuff off of their chest, like we do. We do it differently, and it's just a lifestyle for us, and we're bothered in a different way by this stuff. We don't like all that stuff piling up and piling in, and like I said in my previous video, we are truth bearers. Part of our spiritual gift is to hold on to the pure, raw, unadulterated, like the godly truth, just as it is. We don't need to rephrase it. It's just the truth. This is why I was able to listen to her going on about that, and I didn't have anything nasty to say. I didn't call her any of the obvious names, like, oh, well, you're being a this, you're doing that, like, the title that they give to women in an affair. And there's really not an equal and opposite title for men, I've noticed all of my life. None of that happened because it's not where I am or who I am. So she enjoyed that, and she sucked that up, and she ate that up, and it's like a spiritual vampire thing, where some people are just absorbing your energy whether they don't know it or not. She was taking in the love and the care and the good things, and she was absorbing all of that. But once she was full up, then she was done, because she's not aware of it on a spiritual level what's going on. She will think of herself as being innocent. In her mind, she will have gotten tired of me, because even if I was there to listen to all of her stuff, and her stuff was choosing to have an ongoing affair, then she, in her own mind, would decide, I just can't stand there and listen to her, because, if you're not willing to help yourself, this is the story they tell. Certain people will come up with a story as to why they're right to close out a relationship. And this one particular time I thought, okay, it's happening again. I'm tired of this going on. I'm really not putting up with this anymore. But it's always going to be something like, inside of her mind, they're always thinking something like, and the thing that will be said about it if she's talking about it somewhere is, oh, she wouldn't do anything to help herself, and I just couldn't stand that. Like, I don't understand it, and if you're not willing to help yourself, then who are you going to expect to help you? Meanwhile, I'm living a life of helping myself. And this is part of the reason why I can be the loving companion to listen to someone who is choosing repeatedly to do something very obviously wrong with victims and fallout, and not even say anything nasty to you in the process. We just had a clear and kind of open conversation. Like, there's a certain amount of openness you have Like I said, NTs sometimes need to get things off of their chest, and they will seem to be bonding with us. It's because they're overwhelmed with their own emotions and they need a place to get it out. But inside of their culture, and again, she said this, none of her friends, nobody she knew wanted to talk about it anymore, including her best friend. It's a different level of thing when your best friend is done with you talking about something like this. So I came along, and all of a sudden she's bonding with me, and it seems very intimate that we're just communicating because, I mean, I already knew better because this is my life's interest. I already know how this stuff is going. But, you know, I did the thing. I communicated enough in NT language, and I was just being me. My masking has always been to translate me into something that someone else can understand in their neural language and their neural culture. So I'm being who I am. I'm just translating like you would from English to Spanish or Spanish to Russian, so that the person who's listening for that one language can hear and understand what you're saying. So that is why I was able to be there and listen to this, because of my knowledge and my understanding and growth. And when I saw the signs, she started seeding the signs. And the first sign was when she takes the event that I've been through that traumatized me, where I was afraid to sleep. I was in a situation where I was afraid to go to sleep. I was in terror. I actually couldn't even go to sleep that night. It was bad, and I don't want to get into it. But some of us will know. Stuff happens, and once it was over, eventually I needed to go to sleep. My body was wrecked, but my stress levels were so high, I couldn't calm down. It was a thing. For a while, I was afraid to sleep. So she took this thing and threw it at me. That wasn't something I did to myself. That wasn't a person I was being. Those weren't choices I was making. I consider that to be vilely low and subhuman behavior. To throw something that horrible that has happened to someone in their face. But this is what she chose, and it's not unusual for something like that to be chosen. Very often what happens later is somebody will just, and this is not like just an NT thing, you have to be at a level of spiritual growth where you have no idea how to control yourself, or you have chosen not to make the right choices. It could be that you just are unaware. It could be that you mindfully choose to do the wrong thing, but it's a spiritual thing, because if she had been in a different place, she would not have done that. She wouldn't have done any of it, but she was in the perfect place to make all of those choices. You see, it was a place where a friendship, so to speak, that wasn't really a friendship, where I wasn't getting anything out of the relationship, but she was getting a boatload out of me. Again, the emotional vampire thing. That ended. I've had situations like that end before, but for me personally, even if I were to actually be completely alone, I would prefer to be completely alone than to have someone like that there, because someone like that is actually a series of challenges and nightmares that I don't need to deal with myself. And I see things in the Christian mystical way, so I know what's going on. I don't blame her for being the horrible person in that event and throwing horrible attacks and trauma at me, because this is what some people do. Their spirits will just seek out what's wrong in someone else, and you will end up getting preyed upon because they can feed off of it and because they can make your trauma worse. And so the master of all deception and wrong literally is just, I mean, hitting off pops in all direction. At that point, you're destroying this person because they can't in that moment. The hope is they can't and never will be able to do better. So that's all they're going to ever be, is that getting, you know, declining, getting increasingly worse. You've ruined their life, and then you're taking somebody else who did not make a series of bad choices, but bad choices came against them. You're taking their harm and their terror and their trauma and using it to destroy them. Maybe you can't make them do the wrong things, because maybe that's not where their choices are in life, but you can make them feel the wrong things. Like whatever is wrong around them, just lay it on them until they're just crushed. And I personally decided in that particular moment, I'm really glad. There's a thing, God will take what the devil means for harm and turn it for good. There are multiple levels on which you could look at this. Whether you process God as some human figure in the sky and the devil as some human figure in the ground. Whether you process that as the psychological choices that somebody makes. how the mind works, so that some people choose better and some people just don't. Whether you process that as the breath of life, the essence of all being, where God is that which leads to positive and healing and growth, and the devil is the author of death and deception, and you're choosing which side you're going to go with and who you're going to be that day. There is a concept that already says what's meant to harm you, like this series of attacks, needling statements. So editing me sees I didn't finish my point. So what I was saying is, the theory is, it's actually a self-proof if you test it. God will take what was meant for harm and turn it to good. And this could mean a million different things. But all this stuff that I went through with her, I've been through all this stuff in my life earlier. And I was just living my life. Before this experience with this particular person and her particular ways, I just lived a life. People came, they talked, they interacted, and I put up with it. And one of the magnificent things that happened having this interaction with her, at a point in my life where I was discovering so many magnificent things about me, and on my way to having a kind of relationship with God I didn't know I was built for or that I was capable of getting, I would put up with that trash. But after her, it put it in my face. The memory is one thing, the knowledge is another, the distaste is constant. But having it become your present, that changes things. Because when you know that you're open to being there and being loving for somebody, and you've been taught to be loving, and I'm an inherently loving person, and I'm empathic, and all these good things, sometimes you're just there for somebody. But I was living in a place where I would be just there for anybody before her, and then when she came along and the devil was trying to use her to, vampire me, take my good energy, and then give me back horrible things, make a horrendously traumatic experience somehow even worse. So props for that. You really fulfilled your life purpose that day. I'm sure that's all you were put here to do. But anyway, sarcasm. But anyway, long story, it might not be what she was put here to do, but it was what she chose. You do have a choice. God gave you a choice. That was turned to good for me, because I'm now a person who will never put up with this level of trash again. This level of behavior I see as complete and utter total trash. Never going to put up with it again. So God took the harm of her and turned it into something good, where now I can move on forever, and now I can use my energies and my gifts and my blessings and my relationship with my Christ to move way past this. And I was going into saying something about how there are a lot of needling statements that people will use after that when they get into a place where they're sensitive. They know they've said something, but they wish they hadn't said it. And so now all of a sudden, since they can't control themselves and they couldn't control themselves in the event, it's kind of like, okay, well, you heard it. I said it, but I can't unsay it. So whatever part of me is conscious of how uncomfortable I'm feeling, but can't process why and can't take responsibility on any level whatsoever, it's just going to be really pissed off that you heard it. The fact that you heard it, and they can't understand how we process life. We're not going to judge you and think that you're a crappy person because of even if you make crappy choices, come on, we're not going to judge you and think you're a crappy person. We're going to think you're a person who made crappy choices, because that's what actually took place. That's a self-proof. That's what you're sharing. But then they get, okay, well, I'm now going to displace. I'm going to project my own bad feelings about self. In my culture, I have to be a good person. So in order to be a good person, it needs to be fine that I'm me. I can trip up. I can make a mistake. It's complex. You can't understand. You shouldn't be judging me. But you heard it. You know. In their minds, we now know about the secret silent them that no one is supposed to know about or see. So sometimes they will turn that around and they will start doing stuff to you. They will start changing their behavior. A minute ago they were just, in this case, all about them. Never really any compliments, but the compliment was something like, so glad that you're listening to this. And that's not a compliment, it's just her enjoying my energy. But so glad that you're talking, that you're here for this and I'm talking about it and you're listening, and then all of a sudden it turns into passive aggression. Sometimes, whoa, that's right, really overwhelming aggression. Natural sunlight, little ladies and germs. And they will start doing different stuff. They'll start bringing stuff up. Someone can convince you that this is not happening, by the way, for whatever their reasons. You might even convince yourself it's not a big deal, but they'll start with something. For instance, as I was saying, the needling statements. At some point, she messaged me back, and I was like, I know how this works. It's all very boring to me. It's very old. But she messaged me back after something else, and I was like, okay, happy holiday thing. And she's like, oh, happy holiday. So, you done anything about your life situation yet? And I was like, oh, that's the message that they send. I knew it was over, because people like that will send you a message like, okay, I brought this thing up. You didn't do anything about it then. I'm asking you if you've done anything about it now. It's been a good amount of time. Have you? Have you changed it? Have you fixed it? Have you completely changed the problem now? Are you making the steps I told you to make? Because my steps are the ones you need to take. They're the only ones. Yours are wrong. When I saw that message, I personally knew that's it. The relationship is over. If I never contact this person again, she will never contact me again. And it's been years. Never contacted me again, because I didn't put myself back out there like that. When I saw how she took my energy, showing her love while she was making her decisions, and then afterward, when she'd moved on from that one chapter in her life, she'll be there again, but she won't have someone like me there, God willing. But anyway, when she's done with that situation and she's ready to move on with her everyday life, editing me again, when she's ready to move on with her everyday life, all of a sudden she has no need for me anymore. And I've seen this happen multiple times in life, and I'm not going to go into it here because I know I already went into it in a second. She had absolutely no need, because it was just she needed some support so that she could manage to get through her event the way she wanted to do it. And then once it was all over, why in the world would she need that same support when she's going back to her regular life where she encodes everything? She doesn't need that one straggler on me, the autist, the empath, the person who doesn't know what's about to happen or that they're being used. And I'm sure she has no idea she was using me. 100% I'm certain that in her mind, no using was taking place at all. But there's no room for that. You are now as the affair. You're inside of that box in her mind where you don't exist, because in her everyday life, she thinks of herself as being a different person. It's just this one event where she personally needed to suit her own needs by using somebody for a very specific purpose. For a very specific purpose. And once she's done with that very specific person, for that very specific purpose, she moves back on with what she considers to be the rest of her life. And now all of a sudden you're just placed in that box for that one moment in her time frame, for that one instance of her affair or whatever the person's doing, that one instance in their life. You're in a box that's meant to contain that so they can put it aside and move on to whatever they think of themselves being on the whole. However, they just get through their main, what they consider to be their main life in that moment. That box is not going to get opened again unless they feel like they want to go back through that situation and get some more, pump up and drain some more energy. This is why sometimes like that, there's a term for it, and I can't think of the term because I don't really use these terms, but I've heard them. Something weird like a callback girl. And that's probably not the term, but it's basically when you're in a relationship and there's somebody that you're using for a specific purpose. Usually they mean romantically, honestly, sexually, using you for a particular purpose, and then they put you away so they can go back into what they consider to be their regular everyday life. And then all of a sudden, boom, they have this need again, and whatever this need is, they feel like squeeing it out all over some specific person, and they know you're there for that. So if what they feel like squeeing out is their worries and concerns about how this next meeting and this ongoing lifelong affair is going to go, they might reach into that box and contact you again. When I decided I'm not going to contact her anymore, in NT language, I said, okay, not here for this. But at the same time, and it wasn't that flat and simple, I have a tendency to be like, okay, here's an answer that keeps I've learned how to do this over the years. Here's an answer that keeps my privacy and my dignity intact, and then I'm just going to leave it to you. The ball is in your court. A lot of the time when I'm like, if I don't contact you again, what I really mean is if I don't put myself out there on a spiritual level, because once you learn how to do it, there is a way to use their language, other people in general, but yes, also NTs, to learn their language to cut something off in a way that isn't actually cutting it off. It's just not feeding your energy to them. You can continue the conversation, but once they no longer get that energy they're used to, their spirits are done, because that's not what they're there for. That's not what they're here for. And the person they're controlling in that moment is not going to do anything that doesn't feed them.